Good evening, everyone. Will the clerk begin the roll call, please?
Mr. Feingold. Dr. Hope.
Yes.
Dr. Long. Ms. Oliver.
Here.
Mr. Hessings.
Here.
Mr. Rivera. Mrs. Ruiz Nicholas.
Here.
We have quorum.
Great. And moving on to the minutes, has everyone had the opportunity to review them? Any edits, changes?
Motion to approve.
Have a second?
Yeah, second.
Great. All right, moving on to new business. And for new business, oh, I'm sorry. And then Mr. Strassel, would you like to come up and speak, please? Thank you.
Good evening, each one of you. Thank you very much for the work that Thank you very much for the work that you do on the Sustainability Committee. I only learned about it recently. My name is Mike Strassel. I live at 6141 Southwest 16th Street, Plantation, right in front of Seminole Middle School. And you may have heard my story, but 198 days ago, I couldn't take it anymore. And I said, well, if there's this much trash, why don't I just pick up the trash? And it has become a movement on 16th Street, which has Tropical Elementary, Seminole Middle to South Plantation, all the way down to University Drive. The community has embraced this idea of we don't need to have, in this period of time, I've picked up over 9,000 masks that the kids take off their face and throw down on the ground. And if you walk on a street and it's littery, it's not a big deal to add a little more litter. If you can get it clean, people don't drop the first piece. Pardon me. In this process, the businesses that I frequent on Peters Road, and it started with the Seminole Smoke Shop, not that I frequent that one, but they had so much litter. And I saw the Indian guys there and I stopped and talked to them and they said, we'll put your signs up. And they even painted the building and they even cleaned up the area in front of Walgreens, which is directly across from them. And then that school that's next to the Walgreens, they took signs and they cleaned up their area. And that whole street that runs between Walgreens was awful. And the school took on the responsibility of cleaning that up and added signs. The American Legion, the Georgia Pig, Mr. D's, all of these people have said, hey, this is great. And it's actually working. Now, I got a little too rambunctious and had a few too many signs out, and the city thinned them out off of the medians. And now they're just in people's yards and it's working out great. I'm here because it was recommended that I get in touch with you to see if we can expand this program. I'd like to see the schools involved. I'd like to see the signs in the school yards where there's so much of this litter. And then I'd like to maybe have a contest between the schools of whose school can look the best and turn it into an effort where people are literally thinking about it. And it has become a conversation in our neighborhood, like a regular dinner conversation. The signs are great. We love them. If you follow the neighborhood app, you've seen it. My thing kind of went viral. And there were a couple thousand people looking at it and making positive comments. So it made me think, all right, people like this. I wanted to talk about the city of Sunrise has a clean team where they actually have 2 trucks that don't do anything but go out and clean up. And maybe there's a possibility that we could have a clean team. I know Mayor Stoner on the app said she liked that idea. And she's the one that put up the pictures of the clean team from the city of Sunrise. I was hoping that the Heritage Park, which I don't think is a Plantation Park, they love my signs. They actually called me and had me bring them more. And it is cleaning up that area. I'd like to see if we can't consider having our city parks incorporated. There aren't very many trash cans because I have to carry my own trash barrel, but maybe we could get a few trash cans that have this. Has anyone seen the cute logo that we came up with that says, please don't litter? If you've not seen it, I'll run out to my truck and grab one and bring it in. I think I have one out there, or you can easily find it on the neighborhood app, but it has a peace, love, and happiness sign on the, because I didn't want to name a city. I didn't want to say anything controversial. I didn't want to say anything political. All I wanted to say was, please don't litter, with a peace, love, and happiness, because my old days with Skipper Chuck, if you remember that. And so if we could consider or get it onto a proposal to get a clean team that the city pays, to get the signs included in the park, to get me with the ability to talk to the students, which I'll go and do, and speak to the kids, and then have them adopt their school properties. And then I wanted to point out that the businesses have adopted it also. And I'm here to say, this is going on. If I can get your help and we can make it bigger and better, I'd like that to happen. Anyone have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Strassel, thank you so much for coming. It's really encouraging to see someone finally here. I think from our initial meeting, we've been hoping someone would come. So we appreciate, you coming and doing your part. Do we have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know if you're able to get businesses involved in terms of not just cleaning up their places, but actually maybe providing some funding.
At this point right now, I'm $1,600 into signs, garbage bags, wheelbarrows that I use as tools in this. And once it catches on, I'm going to need someone to help me with the social media sides of things, to ask people for donations. That is something we need to find a way to fund this, but I wasn't here to ask for money first. Let's get the engine running, and then we'll figure out how to pay for it.
Okay, and you were mentioning that the schools, it would be one, that it would be very good to, like do contests or whatever, because that's one of the places where you get a lot of them, right?
Yes, they create litter, and it has the manpower in the students to make it their responsibility to keep have pride in their own property. And I believe that I'm a good speaker. I believe that I can go in with my "Please Don't Litter" shirt. When I do this every day, I have 2 golden retrievers that are gorgeous that are with me, and I pull a wheelbarrow. And if you look at it online, people like the look. And the kids all talk to me. They call those the trash dogs. And when I'm going down the street, they're bringing litter to me. And it's a different attitude at Tropical, Seminole. South Plantation, not as much yet, because they haven't embraced the science.
And you said that is, where do I look, in the neighborhood app?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, under what?
Well, probably my name would work, Michael Strassel.
Okay.
I'll look on my phone right now, or maybe my wife can. And if you can give me an email address to send it to, I'll send it to you right now.
Okay, my email address is olivamaria53@gmail.com. And it's OLIVA.
OLIVAMARIA53@gmail, and then you can share it with the other members. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. This isn't the last meeting I'm going to come to.
I do have a couple of questions, but first I want to commend you for taking the initiative for doing this. It reminds me that if you have the chance to read a book that says building the communities from the inside out. So it's the same type of concept and ideas in terms of how to continue to get the community working together. My question is really for staff. Is this something that would fall under code enforcement or public works? Are there any other boards that might, I don't want us to kind of.
I know that Mr. Strassel has spoken with the EAD, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I don't know what action I don't know what action was taken there. I think there are probably opportunities there to work with the schools. I made a note to myself, especially when you talk about high schoolers, I always think about community service hours. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to maybe work with the schools and see if you could tap into that. Because kids seem to be a lot more interested when it has,
Service hours.
shall we
attached.
say, an immediate payback.
Absolutely.
In terms of the city itself, unfortunately, litter is a difficult thing for code enforcement or for law enforcement because they have to see it happen. And just like most of us who have heavy foots, we don't speed when we see that blue light in the rear view, and people tend to be a little less forthcoming with their waste. when they see a uniformed official there of some description. I think the challenge for Public Works is our Public Works Department is already stretched. There may be opportunities certainly to look at some partnerships, look at some other things to try and do things, but off the top of my head, I don't have an answer for you.
And I do believe the goal is to do it with the community. I'm not looking to tap the budget. I'm looking to create energy from the people that live in the city to have pride in what they own.
I love the idea. And again, it's sometimes, the assistance does not necessarily have to be financial.
Mhm.
It could also be with other, other advisory boards where you're really building the community. So that's what I was looking for, more or less, if they could get the support through other departments as well.
Well, thank you for listening to me. We'll all think about this. I'll be at the next meeting, whenever that is, and we'll continue to work on this, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Mr. Strassel, I had a question for you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, doctor.
I'm curious, besides masks, what are you picking up? I mean, it's great. It's like the beach cleanups. We need it. But we
Sure.
also need to turn the source off. And I'm just curious, now if you go around picking things up, what are you? what do you see?
That's a great question, and I'm happy to tell you a story. Because I work area between the Turnpike Bridge and University Drive on the south side of Peters Road, I have found that we have serial litterers. There are the same Budweiser cans in the same place because he doesn't want his wife to see what he was drinking during the day.
Mhm.
The same McDonald's bag in the same places because they didn't want his wife or husband to see that they ate McDonald's again today. So I'm not going to leave it in the car, and they don't want the smell in the car. But at first, when this very first happened on Southwest 59th Avenue, it was so chronic that I actually took a big piece of plywood we just had in the garage and I painted "Who does this" on it. And I stuck it there and I collected all the trash and I put it in front of it. And it was the talk of the neighborhood in 1 minute. And my sweet wife said, "Honey, you can't do this. You're going to get in trouble." And so I said, "What if I make a nice sign?"
It's good trouble.
And in this time period, the serial litters on that street have stopped. Now, Public Works came through and took down all the signs because they were against the rules and I put them in the wrong places and they gave them back to me. They were wonderful. And now the residents put it on their yard, which is legal. But during that week-long period when those signs were gone, trash came back.
Could you share your email?
Sure. We have an email address that is just for this, and it's pdlplantation@gmail.com. PDL, please don't litter.
At Gmail. Okay, great.
pdlplantation@gmail. And I thought it was important when I first ran the signs not to put our city name on it anywhere, because I didn't want a guy from Davie driving through and go, "Please don't litter Plantation." Well, hell, so I left it generic, and I think no one has objected really, except the litterers.
Mhm.
And obviously you're bringing this to our attention. Tell us exactly what is expected of this board. How can we support what you do?
Give me ideas of who in the city I can talk, get me access to the schools, get me access to the parks, have them think it's okay to have the signs. When you see the logo and how it is, maybe we could put those on some garbage barrels. You already have garbage barrels, they're just plain old blank garbage barrels. Maybe we could put the logo on them. Access to the schools, access to the park, support of the project throughout, thinking it's a good idea with the city council members. And I wouldn't mind if the city council members and y'all ask me for a sign and you put one in your yard too.
Thank you.
We meet on what, the second Monday of the month? So you know.
So this was the second Monday, so
Yes.
now is this the last meeting of the year?
No.
Okay, so I'll see you
but
next
it's- yes,
second
but
Monday.
It's always the second Monday, yeah.
And I'll let you know what progress I've made and you'll let me know if you come up with any ideas. And maybe my email will light up because you had an idea and you told someone to write me an email.
I like it because I like you said, community. I think it's good when the community gets involved. Because sometimes if we just get somebody to do it for you, you don't.
It doesn't work with my daughter either.
No. Now, when the community gets involved for some reason, it's just, I guess, because it's a pride. It's a pride thing.
It's a pride thing and nobody likes litter, so it is a accepted, they embraced it in my neighborhood and I think we can spread it.
Yeah.
And I can't afford to buy signs for the whole city. So people that want to get involved are going to have to put a little fund together and buy a few signs. And then you can't stick them in the ground once and forget about them. I drag that wheelbarrow picking up this garbage and I'm straightening up my signs and fixing them and keeping them so that they don't look crooked. They have to look just right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're doing a great job.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I don't want to hold up your meeting anymore.
Thank you. Thank you.
So moving on to new business, we will begin on the discussion of work plan. Do we have any comments? Does anyone want to start?
I don't mind starting. Is this, we were charged last meeting to talk to the council person that put us on the committee and ask what they would support at the council. Is that what this means, that we're going to talk about that? Or are we going to talk about, we also submitted to Carol what our
One of the
ideas were, and she
things-
collated them into kind of a
Yeah.
map that we could work with. mean,
And I
we're
brought
out-
copies of my quick and dirty cheat sheet for anybody who wants one. They're not glamorous and they're not. I tried to group things as I explained to you last time. What we really need to do, what we mean by discussion of work plan is, as a committee, we need a way forward so that you know where you're going, what it is you want to work on. Talking to you, the elected official who appointed you was a part of that, getting a feel for what it is that the council would like to see you. Hopefully, there are some crossover areas there, some shared interests. Before I forget though, tonight, I'm going to sidewind you and throw out 3 quick little items. First of all, tonight is the last night our meeting will be Zoomed. So going forward, we must have a physical quorum here. You must be present in order to participate. So make note of that. Number 2, we have been rotating our chair. Not everybody has had a chance to chair the meeting yet, but we're getting close to that point. I wanted to throw that out for you to think about, because you may be getting to the point where you want to select a permanent chair. And the other thing I wanted to throw out for you is just a project that has come up for discussion internally that you may want to think about taking on, and that is a community garden. And a number of cities have moved towards community gardens. There's a lot of different ways they can be structured. If indeed that is something you would be interested in incorporating into your work plan, we can certainly look at doing that. And I will share once again my quick and dirty little summary.
Hi, thank you, Carol. Thank you for doing this. I actually understand that this is our last meeting in this room. Is that right? Well, from now on, we'll be in a,
No, ma'am.
no?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We will normally meet here. The only reason we didn't meet in this meeting or in this meeting room last month
Mhm.
was because it was being used for another purpose. But as a general rule, we will meet right here. What this is, though, is the last meeting that we will be Zooming.
Yeah, okay. All right, good. So let me first just say that because I missed the last meeting and it only read the minutes today, I really blew it big time and did not consult with the person that the council member that I'm representing, and I will remedy that ASAP. So one of the things that for a living, one of the things I do is facilitate strategic planning and all that. I'm a process person, right? And I have to say that one of the things that I find frustrating in this room is that it is very difficult, I think, to communicate, especially since we can't communicate outside. It's difficult for us to communicate to each other to actually run a proper kind of strategic planning meeting. And if it's even possible to consider moving it to a room where we're sitting at a table, actually looking at each other and can, maybe even use a flip chart or something like that, or a whiteboard. I feel like that might really help us to have more effective planning and, strategizing and prioritizing. And so I just wanted to put that on the table. Yeah, that's it.
Well, we had that last month by default, and I thought it was nicer to be able to look at people and communicate. I think it works better. I don't know if it's possible, Carol.
Part of it is we are a public body. You are a public advisory board.
Yeah.
Typically, we meet in a larger room. Large room we have here is the council chamber, so that members of the public who may wish to want to be present can do so, because we do have to meet, as you guys know, you've learned this phrase already, in the sunshine. So, but we can talk about that.
I
Take it
personally
back.
prefer it here because like you said, people come in, we don't get it all the time, but we're also new. So eventually, hopefully we'll get more people coming in. So I myself prefer it here than in a smaller room. Because if it's just us, it could be fine, but if it's other people that come in, I don't know. For me, I prefer here.
Over the course of the last month, have we started to narrow down any ideas of what we want as individuals, or in conversation with your council members as to what you would like to work on in the coming months? And let me throw out for you one other thought, which is we are coming towards the summer. A lot of boards, a lot of elected councils will take a break, take a month off during the course of the summer. I know some of you probably have vacations planned. You may have had vacations planned before you were appointed to the board. So if indeed that's something you want to talk about, we can adjust your schedule to take advantage of that as well. So there's lots of opportunities, lots of different directions that we can go in here. If there's an interest in the community garden, we can start to bring together some plans as to how some other cities are running community gardens for you to look at and talk about. One of the things that I did pull off the last county commission agenda, actually it wasn't the last one, it was a couple of months before, or a couple of weeks before, but the county commission is looking at restricting the use of single-use plastics and polystyrene on county property. So for instance, in county parks or in county facilities, they did make a change to the resolution as it was proposed. Originally, they wanted to make it effective on a date certain, but because of outstanding bids and things like that, they needed to amend it to be effective for bids awarded after a specific date. But nevertheless, if that's something you're interested in doing, that's certainly a recommendation we could take back to the council. So there's lots of things going on. It's just a matter of determining what direction and what priorities you all. And then again, talking to your appointed council members is a great way to start to narrow down what the feeling is on the council.
And are we able to, is our body able to either recommend or pass a resolution in support that they send to the county?
You can recommend. You are an advisory board. You can recommend.
I would, that was brought to
And
the city.
Danielle will throw something at me if I overstep, correct?
So you all, as an advisory board, you're charged with creating recommendations to recommend to the city commission. And so if you garner enough support for those recommendations, potentially the commission would then implement the recommendation.
Well, I would love to revisit single-use plastic. That was brought up to the city council within the last year. There was a speaker from Oceana. She was very informative. It was not well received by all the council members, but I think sometimes new ideas take a while to settle in. And since that time, it's been passed in Broward County. It's been passed in Palm Beach. There's what it involves. You can't ban plastic bags, but the city is allowed on, to get around the preemption, they can say, we can disallow this on city property, plastic or polystyrene. Nikki Fried, the Commissioner of Agriculture, is working on that. There is definitely health problems associated with it. And there's that polystyrene breaks down to microplastics and it's in the environment and we're eating it. And I think we should work on that. When I approached my council person about that, she said she loved the idea. She wasn't sure if they were ready for it, but I think we should, I mean, we're giving up our personal time. I think we should aim to try to make, I think building community is great, but I think we should try to change practices in the way the city sets the example. If the city says we are going to ban polystyrene and discourage single-use water bottles in our facilities and make water dispensers available to people, that sets an example. If they say, you know, I think that, or if they say we're going to do an energy audit and decrease our energy consumption, you know, in line with the protocols set by environmental organizations around the world, we're going to try to do that. That we become a leader rather than following behind other cities. And I think we should push for things like that. I think we should revisit asking the city council to consider banning polystyrene and straws on public property. It doesn't preclude individual businesses in the city from doing it. It's just saying we're not going to pay that. Remember years ago, McDonald's did it. Everybody said, oh, McDonald's can't do it. They did it. McDonald's, you know, they did fine. People still eat McDonald's. So.
And so if I may, part of your work on this board, while you can recommend ordinances or programs, but it's, you know, if single-use plastic wants to be one of your goals or one of your, you know, items that you want to look over over the past or the next year, there should be more to it than just the ordinance. You know, you guys should do the research to see what works in different places. And you touched on a great point. You know, the city is really limited in what they can regulate. You know, they don't want to go out and tell private businesses what they can and can't do. And so, like you said, limiting the use of single-use plastic in city facilities, in city parks, like Broward County has done, is one way to do it. You also could do it more as an initiative or something more aspirational in the beginning, you know, as you're educating, as you're garnering support, then have it become something that's required. But, you know, just grasping onto one of these themes, there's a lot more to do with under that umbrella than ultimately passing a law.
It's a resolution. I can
Yeah.
provide the information about the city municipalities that have already done this.
Right.
It's not new. We wouldn't be like leaders in this. We would like not to be the last town, I think, in Broward County to recognize this as a problem. I think we could revisit it. It doesn't cost anything. It's a city saying we're not going to support contributing toxic plastic to the environment.
I think part of what Danielle is reaching to is that as you bring forward an idea like this, there is an educational process. And part of that is, if it's going to be a recommendation to the council, laying the groundwork to educate the council members. And I'm going to draw a parallel, you know, Nick, you work with state elected officials. We don't just roll a bill out and expect everybody to sign on. There is an educational process that goes along with me making or helping you understand why I need you to fund my appropriation or why I need you to adopt my policy. And I think that's what Danielle's trying to get to. Yes, you're right. We would not be the first city. There are other folks ahead of us. You're clearly more knowledgeable on this than many of us are. Share your knowledge. Help us understand those pieces is really what she's saying.
I agree, but it's hard to, we sit in this room, we talk to each other. Are we going to be able to address the council? Are we going to be able to meet with them? You know, I agree. We should adopt ideas and practices that they can support, that they are interested in. That's one way to be effective. but we don't even know, you
Well,
know?
but again, this is part of why we had the discussion that we did at the last meeting about each of you talking to the people that appointed you. So that when we come in, we know, for instance, or we're comfortable saying that we believe that there is a consensus to move forward with this idea or that idea. It also becomes an exchange of information. It's an opportunity to start to educate. If we get to the point where you want to make a recommendation and the council chooses to take it up, there is certainly an opportunity for board members to come speak, come address them at a public meeting, encourage them. But first, we have to get to a point where we have a recommendation that we can support.
No, thank you so much. I love the idea. And I think this is a project we can really put our teeth in and begin to really function as we were supposed to. I'm one of those, I believe when there is change, you really have to not only educate the elected officials, you also have to speak to the residents. If there are neighborhood associations, we will begin there and say, this is what we're doing. I love it because that will allow us to start with the education and then really we do our due diligence to really see what we can do before we go and recommend anything to the elected officials. So I think we need to be thorough. We need to kind of put a timeline in terms of what we want to do, but I will really love that idea.
Well, maybe this becomes a project that you want to start to work on and move forward.
I too actually really support this, and it addresses both water quality and air quality issues for me, as well as wildlife safety and security and all that. But I actually think for any kind of change like that, it needs to be, as I believe April said, multi-pronged. You know what I mean? So we have to be able to, I agree, we should first talk to our council members to see if they would support it. And I think then we might come up with a phased strategies so that we could look at ordinances, but also look at and start with the city certainly, but also look at, again, incentives for businesses to get on board with this, some kind of awards program for businesses so that if they, that they get some recognition, some kind of benefits if they comply. That would be true. I'm thinking also when it comes to the trash pickup, right? If you can get businesses some kind of awards, if this commission can say, oh, you get a sustainability commission award if you, something. I mean, I think that, so I think this is actually a very worthy initiative. And then when we do an action plan, we decide who's going to write the research paper to present, who's going to, I think it would be helpful to talk to some people. If we choose this, that now we really bring in those people who've really done this. We know some of the experts who are working on this, how have other cities done it? What are the different types of things that they've done? And then, so we really focus on that. And then we come up together jointly, each take responsibility for a piece of that action plan, right? So that would just be my proposal. If we decide to go with this, but I would very much support this. I actually also support community gardens, by the way. I think they're wonderful.
And so just to comment on that, the multiple prongs, the community, the private sector and government, how are you going to engage all three to buy into whatever your initiative or proposal is?
And it may be a proposal to start with some sort of social media. It may be a proposal to think about some way of engaging schools and school children. Mr. Strassel mentioned his idea of getting a contest going amongst the schools. Again, just different ways to engage different aspects of the population and sort of pull them into this.
I'll just say that at the schools, the single-use plastic bottles is the biggest litter, other than masks. You had asked that question. And tying this into the school, and please don't, it goes together.
Okay, I agree with everything, but I also think, because I spoke to my counsel and Tim Fadgen, and he was saying that one of the things that we have to do is like in the recycling. He's very much into the recycling. He spoke to McCormick, I believe.
Don McCormick, yes, ma'am.
And he even recommended that either maybe you or he will call McCormick, to come and visit us, and give us a presentation. But he was saying that the thing is to simplify and also we need to educate.
Mhm.
Because like with the recycling right now, he told me that the percentage of the recycling that we put out, a lot of it goes to the landfill. They don't even end up in recycling because we just put everything in there.
Mhm.
You see, if you take the time and you'll follow through, but most people don't do. They just figure, okay, this is recycle, and then we think we're doing a great job, but then they end up in the landfill.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that it is so true because like the boxes for pizza, they're not recyclable. And you may think they are, but a lot of, so you have to be careful, and he was telling me that, and I understand because and he says that, they even said that if in doubt, if not, if you're in doubt, just.
When
throw it
in
away.
doubt, throw it out
Yes.
is the,
And it's true
campaign.
because I myself, sometimes I go, should I, but if you don't check, I mean, a lot of people don't, we know that. Because we're busy, sometimes you end up with the plastic, you just figure, hey, it goes into the recycle bin and it shouldn't. So I think everything is good, but I think we need to start from the bottom. I don't know why, because I think like the recycling for me, I think it's a big thing, but I think we're doing a great job. And I don't know, sometimes I think that we are not really, because we're not that educated. We don't, it's very complicated. Maybe we need to simplify a little bit more, like say, glass, this and aluminum, something like that. That's, how and maybe have which is, I think McCormick, she's the state director of, for the.
she is with Waste
Waste management,
Management. She handles their recycling education
Right.
program. There are a lot of interesting things you can do with recycling. There's some really interesting programs out there. I know that I looked at it with another organization that I was a part of. It's a heavy lift. It's a
Challenge.
difficult needle to move. I'll be very, very honest with you. That doesn't mean it's not worth working on, but it is a difficult needle to move. So I've made some notes and I'm seeing that we want to talk about the polystyrene project as one of the things that you might want to put in your work plan. I put recycling down as one of the things you might want to talk about. Litter really is kind of an off-growth to some degree of the polystyrene, but I put that down as an item. I know Dr. Schwabel's interested in the community garden. Any of the rest of you have any feelings on that issue? I mean, this is your first work plan. I would encourage you to pick a couple of items, but don't get too broad.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I think one or two items will do the trick. And that I think the recycling thing is partly an issue because it kind of goes back to the single-use plastic issue and the use of plastic bottles, water bottles in particular, which is really a new problem, relatively speaking, in the grand scheme of things. But and a lot of that has to do with water quality, right? But the I think, again, I think that the focus needs not just be on recycling, because we know things go into landfills. They also go to the third world where they, create toxic environments for people overseas and developing countries. And I think we also really do need to push eliminating single-use plastics, educating the public to get, to break this, plastic bottle habit. And, I think the focus needs to shift a little bit away from just recycling to less use, less consumption, if that makes sense. So that's, yeah.
I've been an avid recycler for as long as, but it's a huge, huge issue. Coral Springs dropped their recycling program for a while because they couldn't get rid of it years ago. China's quit taking it. A lot of it goes into the incinerator and we're breathing the stuff that should be recycled. I think it's an educational campaign to help the community would be good, but I think for us, tackling recycling would be like saying, we're going to go to net zero in Plantation by 2025. The more you look at that problem, the thornier it gets. But the 3 R's, it's reduce. Recycle is the last one. And, Mike is doing it. If we, the only market, the viable market for trash is aluminum. If we get people picking up aluminum and you can sell it back. It could fund your signs. You know, I think we want to be visible. I think we want to make a difference, and we want to pick something where we can achieve something. So if you know, we could start with polystyrene, that is just something the city can, if we educate them and they build a consensus, they can do that. And if businesses want to sell to the city, they have to change their business plan. But that's what we want to do, is change behavior in a positive way. When I contacted Jennifer Andrews, she said she was also in favor of flyers in the utility bills where we can start the educational process. So if we say we want to do a community garden and we put that in, you know, I don't know what it would, I guess that would take some money. I know I've seen it in my utility bill that they announced some city events that are happening. But once we decide on our plan, we could start trying to educate the public through that. But I as much as I think recycling is important, I think we need to focus on the first two R's, because I don't think we can, I think that's, yeah.
So I wanted to bring up, I had brought it up a couple of times, so I might sound like a broken record, but there is the Southeast Regional Climate Change Compact. It gives us an outline for all of these things: reduce, reuse, recycle, energy audits, resiliency officers. It has loads of different options for us to look at. It's something that Plantation has not joined as quickly as other cities in the county has. My concern for that is that right now things say coastal and inland flooding, right? It's a nebulous idea. It's not something that people are terribly concerned about at the moment. But in the future, as this happens, it'll help decide where people choose to live one day. And if Plantation doesn't show up on the website for the compact as one of the cities that has joined and have made at least some concerted effort, people are not going to want to live in the city. That's my belief. And for that reason, I hope that we would go to our commissioners. I've spoken with mine. He seems interested in it, Commissioner Sertal. I think this advisory board should be seen as much as something setting up our city for an economic future as much as recycling. And one of those ways is making sure that we have businesses and residents choosing to stay living in the city. And if we don't show in a public way, like that website shows, then we might not have as many people here. So I would encourage you all to speak with your commissioners about it. Look on the website. It talks about polystyrene plastics. It talks about the energy audits. It talks about the officer. It talks about all these things that we discussed. I think there's even a section with the community garden. I hope it's something that we can use as a framework. It's something that's had a lot of money pumped into it. There was a lot of experts who have put ideas behind it. And I believe that it's something that we should use kind of as our guide moving forward. And I think today we can start talking about going to our commission, maybe making a motion for them to picking up some of those recommendations and considering them.
You do have at least one hand raised. If you're ready to take comment.
For public comment, yes, please.
Good evening. This is Councilmember Denise Horlin. Happy to see everyone there tonight. I apologize I missed your last meeting. I just wanted an update on a couple of things. First of all, that was Councilmember Andreu who had introduced the proposal for a plastic straw ban back in the city. It wasn't so much that it was not warmly received. What we had asked was for some contact with our business community and our Chamber of Commerce so we could really get an idea of how it would negatively affect the businesses. At that time, I had also suggested, which I would suggest to this board, and I just heard Ms. Morris suggest, was that you reach out to the schools, specifically South Plantation High School, which is a magnet environmental and Everglades restoration program. I've already spoken to them about this board. they would like to be involved with you. And I think if you get the students from that program involved who have been working on environmental issues for quite some time, they might be able to help you get the word out. And the final thing, and I don't want to throw a wrench into it, but I've been working on a polystyrene ordinance. I ran the idea by our city attorney back in March. I've been basing my idea on Hollywood, which recently passed their ordinance. So what I had planned on doing was asking the council Wednesday evening in council comments, let them know that I've been working on this and bring that forward. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on that.
So I think that question then is, how can we further support not only the ordinance, but its implementation and education about it? And I really like the idea of reaching out to South Plantation High School. And I certainly agree. It's important to reach out to Chamber of Commerce and businesses.
Well, again, you may want to, just as we talked before about sort of divvying up the reaching out to your appointing council members as we start to move forward and talk more about this, you may want to sort of divvy up some of those responsibilities. Somebody take the lead on reaching out to South Plantation High. South Plantation High has had the Everglades Magnet Program here in Broward County for I don't know how many years. I'm going to say 10 or 15 at least. They've got some terrific things going on there in that Everglades Magnet. Someone else might want to take a lead on reaching out to the chamber. Mr. Hessing has brought up the Southeast Florida Compact. Maybe somebody else wants to undertake taking a look at the compact and bringing back some information to sort of educate the rest of the group. Sort of as a cooperative, we become a group educating each other on these initiatives. And that may help you start to move your work plan forward. It sounds like you've already got an ally on the polystyrene piece.
I'd be happy to, I have a contact with one teacher at South Plantation. I don't think we want to exclude Plantation High School. I've been there and met a science teacher there. It's, I think they deserve our attention and support too. And they maybe don't have as many resources poured into that school. I think it becomes an environmental justice issue that we at least if we're reaching out to one public school in Plantation High School, we need to reach out to both of them. I can reach at least out to that a science teacher, each of those schools, and ask if their students would be interested in Mr. Strassel's project. And, and I'm happy to say something about that next time. I don't really have any contacts in the business community. I mean, I think everybody keeps mentioning that, and I agree would be nice to build support in the business community, but I don't have any skills in that area or contacts.
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to the chamber.
Great. I
can
was
talk with
hoping
them.
you'd say that.
Yeah.
Yay.
Did you say, Julie, you would reach out to both high schools or just the
Well,
one?
I just know a science teacher in each of the schools that responds to my emails, so I'll start there. I can also send it to the principals, and yeah, I mean, I can do that, and we should do that soon before school gets out. Because kids sometimes need community service hours, they work on them over the summer, so yeah, I can do that. No
I would be
problem.
happy to do the magnet school. My kids attended magnet schools. So, but it would be, I mean, I think we should talk to the schools in the same way. You know what I mean? We'd want to, I think, approach them in a similar way with the same.
Yeah, I'll send an email to both of them and call the teachers
Okay,
that I
all
know and tell them that we exist and want to work with them, and that I can do. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to give you some information. At South Plantation High School, Ricardo Marino is the vice principal. Ricardo Marino's email address is rfmarino@gmail.com. He's very familiar with me. I helped him with the 50th year anniversary, and he sees my signs all the time. Vice Principal.
South Plantation, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Is there, may I please? Is there something that we can bring with us? I mean, we're talking about educating people so that we're all saying the same thing. Is there something that we could quickly put together? So when we approach the schools, the businesses, we're all going with the same train of thought. We're educating you, we're meeting with you, and this is the outcome we're looking for.
I think if one of you wants to take the lead on putting something together, we could certainly circulate it and bring comments back. Of course, we're not going to do, I'm going to call it community comments. You would each have to comment independently, and then we could merge those comments. But certainly, we can take some steps to develop those materials. But again, you all as board members need to take the lead on making those things happen. And again, as you start to do those things, it becomes easier and it facilitates you as a board starting to have a presence, because then you have materials and information to share.
Yeah, I'd be happy to volunteer
I
to
was gonna-
draft. Oh, are you going to?
I was going, we could work together.
Can we work together?
No, sunshine law.
Sunshine, not really. Maybe you divide topics. Maybe that's the way you do it. If you want to look at one piece, or, if you wanted to look at the polystyrene issue and you wanted to look at the litter issue, or vice versa, divide it up that way and leverage your work.
And a quick comment. Are we able to, you send the minutes after the meetings, correct?
City
email?
clerk's office distributes minutes. Yes, sir.
Could I ask a favor? When you send the minutes, would you maybe put in bold, all caps, asking the members who didn't attend to read over the minutes? Because even myself, I don't read them sometimes, moving so quickly, but I do think it'll help the people who weren't able to make it to some meetings catch up, especially now that we don't have it on Zoom starting next meeting. It'll fill them in. If, speak with your commissioner, if that was something we had discussed at a previous meeting, things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't mean like that, but I just meant so people could catch up on it a little bit
Mhm.
easier and it would be brought to their attention.
Mhm.
I'm going to go ahead and let you do that. I'm sure there's other work for me. And of course, my biggest strength is research. So when it comes time to do research, that you can call on me. But I would feel free to go ahead.
Okay.
Because we know that polystyrene is something, I would say the other one might be single-use plastic that we would want to look at. And, but I think those can almost be
I have,
covered in the same flyer, frankly.
Mhm.
okay, so my question is, do you want us all to work in?
I have to go.
All right.
Have a good evening.
See you
Thank
next month.
See you next
you.
meeting.
Bye-bye.
Next meeting. Do you want us to work all in the same thing, or we work on what we think and we bring it up, I'm confused here a little. Do you want us to work all in one thing and then take each, something, or we can,
There's 5 of you here tonight. There's 7 of you normally. Because we can't work together as a group outside of the meetings, it seems like the easiest thing is to sort of divide into sort of pieces that everybody can tackle over the month, and then come back together and share your work products and start to advance those projects.
but the project, the same project or different project?
That's
Like
up to
my
you
project or
guys.
her project, or does it matter, or my project and
That-
bring it up?
That's up to you all.
Okay.
What I think would be helpful is if we had discussed the polystyrene, we've kind of discussed who would pick up what. I'm happy to speak with the chamber about it. But then along with that, I've made it clear what my goal is for
Yeah.
this board. I think we all have individual goals as
Mhm.
well, and maybe we can work on our primary one, as well as the polystyrene plastics that we had discussed as well. And I think 2 pieces would be good, so that we have one actually in motion, the other one we can bring forward, have it a little bit more meat on the bones, and we can discuss which ones we want to pick
Okay.
up.
I think it makes sense to choose 2 issues, but I think to each do our own thing is problematic, because then the message that gets out to the public, it's like, they'll be totally confused. And so, even any one of the proposals we've come up with is going to take considerable effort and again, multi-pronged approaches. So I think we need to reach a consensus about two issues that we're going to tackle and really start there. And then add things as we gather momentum, gain experience with the processes and, we'll be able to move faster in the future, right? And so, and tackle other issues. There's no dearth of issues, but I would highly propose that we reach a consensus, ideally today, on two issues that we're going to tackle as a board, as a commission, as advisory board, and move on from there, not a commission, excuse me. But yeah, I mean, that would be my recommendation for the approach that we should take. I just think it's a much more practical and strategic kind of approach.
It's up to you as a board.
I agree. Two things, we pick a topic. Doesn't mean we can't do something else, but so that we are moving forward and we could just give everybody a little assignment of something to do this month so that we can be productive next month.
For me, I'm very strategic. And what I'm sensing we're doing, each task, it's so task oriented versus looking at strategically, what is it we want to accomplish? Strategically, what is the message we want to send out? Because if we don't take our time to really look at the end result, I think it becomes a little muddy.
Well, what you may want to do, and again, this may be something that falls to one or two of you over the next month. And then we come back and I think it's Nick said earlier, put a little meat on the bones. You may want to pick one or two projects that you want to work on and someone take the lead in sitting down and sort of strategizing what that looks like. If, for instance, it becomes a litter campaign, how do we move that forward? Does that start with a social media campaign? Does that start with maybe a contest amongst some of the schools or whatever those pieces are that you think might start to move it forward? Once we sort of have some of those pieces in play, then maybe you take the lead on the contest with the schools and you take the lead on the social media and you take the lead on, drafting documents and starting to get things ready to take to council and pieces like that. So you may, if you want to look at it a little more strategically, you then can start to part and parcel out what those pieces look like, because you're right. If you're going to run a full campaign, it becomes sort of comprehensive. Even just determining what the information is that needs to be included in a utility flyer, it's a project.
So next week, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
No, you go ahead. I'll speak after.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to a conversation we had a couple of meetings ago. We talked about letting the community really know that we exist. What is our role? So to me, that is one of the basic things. There is this new board. This is what their charge is. And then, people will begin to say, okay, we have this board. Let's send them this. Maybe this is something just like this gentleman did. So I think that education piece, whether it's one or two projects, preferably I'd prefer one project so that it's comprehensive and well done. I would be in support of that. But we've got to be able to craft our message. We've got to be able to craft the campaign and what we want to accomplish. And as opposed to just talking to somebody and saying, okay, this is what we're thinking about. Because if I'm going to speak with someone, I say, this is how you could help us. This is where we are. This is where we want to be. So I don't know. That's just the way I view it. I'm done.
So I actually, whatever we tackle, we do need to kind of conduct some kind of assessment first. And so we actually know what the state of things is, right? Before we start proposing a lot of recommendations. And so, that's certainly something that I could volunteer to do for the next meeting.
That would be
For
awesome.
whatever we choose to tackle. But so next time, I believe I'm moderating. So I would maybe propose that, when we think about a strategy for addressing, if we just need to reach a consensus about one or more issues, right? But once we do, then we need to divide it up between goals, objectives, and activities, right? And that's something that I would be happy to lead us through a kind of a brainstorming on each of those, right? Like draft up some ideas, throw them out there, because sometimes when you see ideas, it stimulates you to come up with new ones, or say, no, that is not feasible, or no, that doesn't work, or no, we're not interested in that, or no, you got that all wrong. It's always easier to say that, right? So, but I think that that's the way we organize that, right?
I love.
Right, goals, objectives, activities, and around that particular, and again, it could be a brainstorming session. Anyway. Sorry.
And just to give you guys a point of reference here, you saw your agenda today. It says, new business. These themes or topics could be something that appear each month. And you talk about that piece and how you're, moving it forward. And then just as a board, we follow Robert's Rules of Procedure. So, you could make a motion to do something, have someone second it, all and against, get the motion to pass. You need, 4 people to pass the motion, and then, that's your action. So, if you wanted to move forward community gardening, if you wanted to move forward the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact, I think she's been trying to have you kind of focus in on a few topics, and I understand you guys don't want to have too much because it would become not able to be achieved. But, it could be immediate versus long-term, or, let's take a stab at this now and we'll come back to it. When you're formalizing these materials, you want to tell the schools, we're taking up these 3 action items right now, so I think you guys are really on the verge of honing into what that is. But I just wanted to give you that application, in case you want to implement it.
And she does bring up a very valid point. You may have more immediate and longer range goals. And again, based on what's going on in the community and what you're hearing and what seems to have, I'm going to say gravitas, you may want to move some ideas ahead a little more quickly than others. That doesn't mean that they're bad ideas. It just means that there may be opportunity to make some improvements more quickly or to make some actions more quickly than others.
I also believe that we have to get ourselves known out there. Like, I think maybe sometimes when there's like we just had Earth Day.
Earth Day.
We should have had that day. We should have had, I think we
A
should have had a
table.
tent.
Okay, but let's
But
talk
it
about
didn't
that a
happen?
second though. Okay, it was Earth Day. What is your message to the community? You don't have one yet. It makes sense to have you there next year. It makes sense to have you there probably 6 months from now. But you need to determine what your message is. And then we need to start to build some materials to
Right.
support you. To have had a table, other than to tell people that we had a sustainability committee.
I think we could have, because maybe we could have gone, people will come and say, what they want or something like that, something. I understand what you're saying, but I think that we would have gone people coming over and say, this is what I want to see in the city and stuff like that. Because I understand it's too soon. We don't have anything. We're like, but in the future, yeah. Because we have to get more involved also with the community, I think. I think that's part of this advisory board. Not just sitting here and saying, okay, this is what we want to do and make laws or ordinance. I like a lot of the community effect, because I think it always in the long run, it works better. Having people involved,
Is there a question on the Zoom? Doesn't say one under Q and A. Am I mistaken? In the chat.
Click on the Q here. Down at the bottom.
Next to raised hand.
There you go. Up.
I can barely read it.
Letting you know she has a polystyrene ordinance in the.
So let me make a motion. That's okay, just to get us moving forward. I would like to make a motion that we, number one, start with working on polystyrene, gaining support for a polystyrene ordinance, but also a much broader approach to getting, the whole community, the whole of community on board on that particular issue. I'm going to propose that as just, I'm making a motion that be our number one issue.
Second.
And then we do all in favor and then all opposed. And if it sounds like maybe it's disputed, we could go through a roll call vote. But Dr. Hope made the motion. Dr. Long seconded it.
So the moderator.
And so do we want to do a roll call vote or do you want to do all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah, the consensus.
Very good. And so now we could discuss that motion if there's some, more how you guys want to break that down or get it started.
Thank you.
Will you tell us a little bit more of how you would want to do that? Put that into practice?
Well, I propose that first and foremost, we need to actually find out what's being done already. For example, learn about the ordinance that the councilwoman is proposing. I can take responsibility for that since I'm her rep. Right. But I propose that we do some research for starters, conduct a bit of an assessment to find out, kind of get a, find out the lay of the land on this issue in our city and perhaps in the broader community. I mean, what other cities are doing.
Well, you make a very good point, which is start by reaching out to Councilmember Horland and finding out what her proposed ordinance is going to entail. I believe Dr. Long indicated a little bit earlier that you have a handle on other cities that have moved forward with similar pieces. Maybe you can bring that piece to the puzzle.
And I'd be happy to bring some reports on the scientific, the health consequences, negative consequences of
I think
polystyrene.
that's absolutely
So
helpul.
that
And
I
if
can
you
do
can
and bring
shed
back to
some
the next
light on,
meeting.
again, what
Why
other
do we
cities-
care? I
Yeah.
can.
Olivia, or I'm sorry if you pronounce it wrong, you could, Oliva, you could brainstorm how you would want to get the community involved, the community engagement aspect. You could look into how, that folds into the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact. You could look into how you guys might want to message that or promote it. Just ideas, but you guys are all going out to do your own work and you're going to come back, next month and
Put the puzzle pieces together.
I do think that it's important also not only to look at the health consequences, but also the other consequences of polystyrene, because they are both air and water quality issues as well. And,
I think that gives you a great starting point.
Mhm.
Any more comments, questions?
Somebody can answer. It's just, it's just random. I know that, we use a lot of water bottles, right? How come we don't use cans? Can you notice that some places, they have water, you can get the water in a can, just like a soda can, aluminum? Is that because it's more expensive? That's why people don't, is that what it is? Or
I honestly don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there's probably not a consumer demand to do it.
because
It's more expensive.
I think it's the
Lauderhill
expense.
looked into that. They were.
did? Okay.
No, I didn't, but I mean, I know Lauderhill was looking into it. Aluminum has a market value to
Yes,
be
you see, yeah.
recycled.
That's,
Plastic gets incinerated. There's no market to get rid of plastic. That's why it's in the water. That's why we're eating it. So, but it's not that, the best is, bring your own, but anyway, there's.
No, but people, the business.
You
they
can
have to
buy
sell,
it,
yeah.
but it becomes a cost issue for
Mhm.
providers.
Okay, that's what I figured, because I discussed this with my husband, and one day I was, I think DHL, when they were giving water, but it was in a can. And you hardly see it, and it probably has to do with the cost. Has to be cost.
But you could certainly research that and look
Mhm.
into it. And, as part of an educational component of the ordinance is how you're going to promote the reuse and how you're going to promote the not using. So
Alternatives.
alternative use. So that's important information that we could use. Are there other cities that perhaps are promoting
Mhm.
other uses? There's something there. You're onto something.
Yeah.
Aren't there health consequences also with tin cans? They're lined with something.
We don't
that's-
want to get sidetracked into that.
No, I'm just saying if it's a viable alternative or not. if there are health
Aluminum, yeah,
consequences. Is it-
right, tin cans are different than aluminum cans, and there's a good market for aluminum. So.
Okay.
Anything further? Questions, comments? Well, then that brings us to the
Thank you
close
for
of our
keeping
meeting.
us organized.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think you've got a game plan for the next meeting. And if we all come back with our pieces, we should be able to have a good discussion and maybe start to formulate some plans to move things forward. A motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.